A good Erev Shabbos. Thankfully, at least for rabbis anyway, sometimes the drashas write themselves straight out of the headlines. If you ever look at major websites of the English language Jewish media like the JTA, Jewish Telegraphic Agency, the name itself tells you how long it's been around, or the Forward, which started out 100 plus years ago as a Yiddish socialist paper. Now it's an English language daily website, which has become a little bit more religion friendly. If you look there, you'd have seen a number of stories about circumcision this week. It couldn't have been mere serendipity that put these stories in the headlines in the very week of Lech Lecha, in which Avram Avinu, our patriarch Abraham, circumcises himself at an advanced age in his lifelong effort to become closer to God and serve God with all his body and soul. As we're going to discuss, the issues at hand are, as usual, nothing new under the sun. The challenges involved have changed very little, really, over thousands of years. They're simply expressed in the language of the times. First, the two contemporary stories, then we'll see how they echo timeless challenges to this most tangible sign of the covenant. One story involves a group that calls itself Bruchim, blessed, also, which is part of the phrase Bruchim Habaim, welcome. The headline of the story reads, quote, "These Jews want to normalize not circumcising, and they want synagogues to help." That's the headline. Basically, there's this cultural pressure at this particular moment, even in the U.S., which sees itself as a bastion of religious freedom, for Jews not to circumcise. This is why we have to be wary of the rise and fall of tides and social movements, because frequently they have a nasty side where the Jews are concerned. There is at this moment a great awareness and movement in the direction of animal rights, which in Europe has led in some countries to banning kosher slaughtering, and may eventually come up in conversations in North America also. Also in Europe, this very same intact movement to outlaw circumcision, it's certainly on the agendas of some, at least some parts of the naturalist social movement world. Now, you could blame both of those inclinations on anti-Muslim sentiments in Europe. Banning ritual slaughter and circumcision is certainly a way to tell Muslims that they're not welcome in your country, but whatever the reason, this U.S.-based group, Bruchim, wants to encourage Jews not to circumcise our sons, and it wants Jewish organizations, particularly synagogues, to welcome and embrace these families and their choices. Interestingly enough, the same story explains that both reform and conservative movements have said that they stand completely in favor of bris milah. The conservative movement about 40 years ago said they would not permit bar mitzvah for boys lacking bris milah. One leader of the movement is quoted in the story with these words. He said, quote, "Do I want to say publicly, even though it's certainly true, that people who violate Shabbat are welcome in our community? Of course they are. But I don't want to say that publicly. I don't want to say publicly, it's wonderful that you violate Shabbat." That's the end of his quote. An interesting take on tradition and modernity, to say the least. The upshot of the story is really, from the lead, it seems to me, a woman in Nebraska, let's call that the Saskatchewan of America for comparison's sake. She approached a liberal synagogue there, wanting to join, and she explained that she had decided not to give any of her sons a bris milah. The synagogue said she could join if she wanted, but her boys would not be allowed to celebrate bar mitzvah there. Her sentiment is no less understandable than it is instructive. She said, "I just want my kids to be happy and welcome and feel as little judgment as possible, no matter where we go." Well, good luck with that. The other story in the news this week involves fallout from a story by Gary Steingart about complications from his bris milah, which he underwent at the age of 7 when his family left the Soviet Union, came to the U.S. Steingart is one of those number of younger Jewish writers born in the Soviet Union to establish their reputations for sardonic takes on emigre life, Jewish life, and fitting in or not fitting in as they grew up in their FSU families in the West. If you know of or have read David Bezmozgis, who grew up at Bathurst and Steeles, Bathurst and Finch, somewhere over there, and is just about the same age as Steingart, you'll recognize similar trends in sort of darkish humor, perspective, style. One was born in Leningrad, one was born in Riga, but the views of the mixed sense of welcome they received on these shores and the clash of cultures and the mixed blessings of freedom are very resonant from one to the other. So in his article that he wrote about the trauma and the aftermath of his circumcision, probably in more detail than we'd want to hear, He doesn't rail against the mitzvah, as you might anticipate, but he says he's trying to open up the conversation to more discussion as to why and how we do this. If you've been to a bris milah performed by Dr. Diamond, you've likely heard him quote Pirkei Avos to say, Lefum tsara agra, that the benefits are commensurate with the trouble taken, or in layman's terms, no pain, no gain. There is some truth to that. In the case of bris milah in particular, there are many medical and lahavdil spiritual benefits, and there does seem to be some pain involved. However, I've been watching closely at brisen for decades, and the suffering seems to be carried in the main by the parents who hand over their newborn son to the lap of the sandek, and for the moment it's out of their hands to shield their boy from discomfort. In a few cases, I've recommended that antiseptic be applied generously to the parents, who seem to have a much harder time getting through the event. What's much more difficult, and perhaps even beyond our ability, is to ensure that this well-meaning mother from Lincoln, Nebraska, as she had hoped, was that our sons, and for that matter our daughters, will be welcome and experience a lack of judgment wherever they go. Wouldn't it be nice? But the world doesn't always work that way. With regard to bris milah, it's really an either-or situation. So what happens is being accepted in some circles means almost certain rejection in others. The choice to be made is where you want to belong, where you want to fit in. And to say that changing any one of the mitzvahs, whether it's bris milah or putting up a mezuzah or cleaning your house for Pesach or putting up a sukkah or abstaining from these mitzvahs is going to guarantee acceptance on the part of the larger community, that at best is an elusive dream. And more than that, shall we simply say, not borne out by history. When the Cossacks come, they don't ask whether or not you had your suits checked for shatnas or whether or not you use a separate fork for gefilte fish and cholent. That you're a Jew is all they need to know. There is something in a dark, remote corner of the Jewish psyche that says, maybe if I just act like everyone around me, they'll accept me more. Again, good luck with that. That is, in fact, a major proposition of this week's parsha, Lech Lecha. Often translated as, you shall surely go, or get thee out in the King James. It's also translated literally and understood figuratively as go unto yourself, in the sense of go become whom you are destined to become. Most instructive in God's calling to Avram is the balance between the particular and the universal, that monotheistic impulse which would become Judaism. God says to Avram in the first 3 verses of the parsha, Lech lecha me'artzecha mimoladetcha mebeis avicha, go out from your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house, el haaretz asher areka, to the land which I will show you. Ve'escha legoy gadol, I will make you into a great nation, says God. Va'gad l'shemecha, I will make your name great. V'heyei bracha, you'll be a blessing. And here's the key. Va'avaracha mevarachecha, I will bless those who bless you. Umekalelcha aor, I will curse those who curse you. V'nivrechu v'cha kol mishpachos ha'adama, all the families of the earth shall be blessed by you, or, following Rashi's explanation, families of the earth will bless their children that they should be like you. That's very instructive, and it's worth unpacking and underscoring. First of all, this is a roadmap for God's blessings to humankind. The relationship with Avram, who becomes Avraham in this parsha, and his heirs, is a unique relationship. It has aspects of social responsibility, loyalty, covenant, extending between the two parties, God and Avram and his progeny, and through that covenant, blessings for all. It clashes in some ways with our egalitarian, universalistic impulse, the view that we're all in this together and no one is special, because it says specifically that we are special, not better, but special. The relationship with God and the Jews is unique, not to say that God does not have profound relationships with all humankind, all families, but what the Torah is saying here is that the nature and quality of our connection is a source and inspiration for all. Recognition, praise, morality, moral behavior, responsibility, faith and hope, and agency. The idea that the future is in our hands. We have the ability to make things better. But it's not always easy or painless or without judgment. That certainly seems to be a lesson of bris milah. The desire to flee from one's destiny, from one's responsibility and unique place in history has ample precedent. Moses says, pick somebody else. Jonah says, not me, I'm running the other direction. But as they say, you can run, but you can't hide. The unique destiny and responsibility that God clearly has for the Jewish people, descendants of Abraham and bearers of the covenant, is not without its judgments on the part of others. It's not without its animosities and persecutions. And yet, it's as the visionaries of true and lasting peace, genuine and enduring recognition and realizing of the divine vision for humankind, and the Jewish people, that the Jewish people carry that covenant, males with the sign of bris milah, females no less, just without the physical indicator. It tells us that it's our calling and our privilege and our responsibility to be a source of blessing, a source of inspiration and morality for humankind. Note that we're not trying to make everyone like us. Not everybody has to be Jewish. It would certainly make it easier to get a minyan, but that's beside the point. Everyone, in our view, has to be themselves, but the best, highest, truest version of themselves. We have a task to inspire that by being the best and fullest and most complete Jews that we can possibly be. Through that inspiration, we hope to be a source and a channel of blessing for all humankind. In every age, including ours, there have been those Jewish parents who hesitated when it came to the mitzvah bris milah, or other mitzvahs also, education, chinuch. Indeed, it's no small thing to hand over your child to the lap of the sandik and the skills of even the most expert moil. And yet, it's a very tangible expression, even from the earliest days of life, that we do not flee from our destiny. We recognize that we're bearers of an eternal covenant, a recognition that not always will everyone pat us on the back and say how much they appreciate having the Jews in the neighborhood, but rather that we respond to a call from a higher authority, higher than just what other people think. The call of God's voice from Sinai still resonates in the essence of our souls today, and we know that it won't always be easy or it won't always be without its challenges, but at the same time, we're happy, we're proud, and we're fulfilled in living a Jewish life and passing that on with all its dimensions of joy and satisfaction and purpose to the future generations. Shabbat Shalom.